One of the rarest but most exciting events in human history is when humanity is afforded the opportunity to answer one of the great unknowns. A question so big and so impossibly difficult to answer that it has been pondered on for thousands of years by both scientists and philosophers alike. And without any further superlative, I ask, are we alone? It's a simple question. A question so simple that perhaps even our evolutionary lineage, the primates, may have similarly, while looking at that vast black sky sprinkled with little white dots, been asking themselves, what is that? You see, most people believe that UFO disclosure, extraterrestrial disclosure is coming. I personally believe it's already here. With major publications like the New York Times and government agencies like the US Navy and the Pentagon admitting that yes, UFOs of the extraterrestrial variety are real, I think it's only a matter of time before even the most hard-nosed of skeptics become believers. Now, there's very little that I can guarantee with the whole topic of extraterrestrial aliens and UFOs. But one thing that I can personally guarantee with this episode, where we go over another major publication, CNN, talking about how UFOs are real, is that this is not an episode you want to miss. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so I usually don't do this, but I wanted to start out the show by giving a shout out to Carl, spelled with a K. He's a very loyal, very awesome viewer. And I believe your birthday was in January. I know we're in April, but I just want to wish you a happy belated. And I want to thank you for being there. You know, this channel has been censored. And if it wasn't for you and all the other loyal viewers, it would be difficult to sustain the channel. So thank you so much for being there. And without further ado, let's get on with the show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Felipe at Second Earth Alternative. We have a slightly different backdrop today. I got a kind of a full house today. A lot of people making a lot of noises, and this is probably the best I can do in terms of getting a private space, because I really kind of want to get this episode today as soon as possible. And if you hear the occasional car go by, just try to ignore it. I live in a kind of a busy street. So today we're going to be going over UFOs, aliens, CNN talking about the possibility that aliens are real. We're going to actually go over some real images of UFOs. We're going to showcase how they are similar to other UFOs that we've discovered in places like NASA. We're going to go over what the occupants of the UFOs may actually look like, as well as go over a not very well known CIA file, mostly because I accidentally discovered it. And it's a really strange file, because when I went to the CIA webpage to try to find this file again, it wasn't there anymore. And this file is going to kind of showcase that not has UFOs and aliens been known for quite some time, but it's also been covered up for quite some time. We're talking about at least 7 decades here. So I better get cracking, because I think we only have a limited amount of sunlight. But I want to start off with this CNN article. And I know a lot of people are not really trusting of CNN, especially after Project Veritas uncovered that one of the directors was saying that they're basically propaganda. I think the audience that has been watching this for a while kind of know my feelings about CNN. I don't want to get political today. I just want to deliver this news, because though you may not trust CNN, if that's your position, we have plenty of evidence to showcase that this particular story is indeed real. So it says here, Pentagon to launch task force to investigate UFO sightings. The Pentagon is forming a new task force to investigate UFOs that have been observed by U.S. military aircraft, according to two defense officials. Deputy Secretary of Defense David Norquist will help oversee the task force, which is expected to be officially unveiled in the next few days, according to the officials. Previous efforts to look into what the Pentagon dubs unidentified aerial phenomenon, that's the acronym UAV. Actually, we should probably start using that more than UFO. I think it's the more proper acronym that's been used nowadays, and UFO just sounds so old school, I guess. So continuing here, unidentified aerial phenomenon were led by the U.S. Navy as many of the documented encounters involved their aircraft. The Department of Defense did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Members of Congress and Pentagon officials have long expressed concerns about the appearance of the unidentified aircraft that have flown over U.S. military bases, posing a risk to military jets. There is no consensus on their origin, with some believing they may be drones potentially operated by earthly adversaries seeking to gather intelligence rather than extraterrestrials. Now, the reason why I was mentioning that CIA file that we have is specifically to debunk this premise that these vehicles can be Chinese or some other foreign intelligence, because let's be honest, UFOs is not a new phenomenon. Let's put it this way. If you were to just take Occam's razor, the simplest explanation tends to be the right one. What is simpler to believe? Is it simpler to believe that at two different periods in human history, although we cannot see UFOs themselves, there would be both a fictional story created of UFOs and then a secondary story to cover up for foreign adversaries, all the while these vehicles seem to behave exactly the same, meaning whatever it is that people imagined in 1950s is exactly what's happening with modern foreign adversaries. Is that the simpler explanation? Or is it that these two events, these two phenomenons are one and the same, and that this is something that humanity has just not come to terms with, that we have simply not learned the full scope of extraterrestrial vehicles who might have a modus operandi of secrecy? I think that's not that difficult to believe. I think there's a lot of scientists, a lot of these skeptics who say, oh my goodness, if UFOs and extraterrestrials are real, then why aren't they here? Why don't we see them? I think this goes right into the heart of the nature of being egotistical. It's one of the biggest human flaws, and scientists, I hate to say it, that they sometimes wear their ego on their sleeves. And I don't think it's within their mental construct to believe that they themselves could be the rats in an experiment, meaning that whatever this extraterrestrial intelligence, how they're affecting us, how they are operating in our Earth, it's too difficult for them to realize that perhaps they can do so in a way that we would not fully understand. And just think about this. If we were to have an extraterrestrial species whose modus operandi is secrecy, that they would just want to be hidden, then the results is exactly what we're getting right now. A lot of people kind of go back to the Fermi paradox and they go, well, if we don't see them, then doesn't that mean we can just be that one species that there is absolutely no other species in the world, that because we don't see them, that maybe that lottery chance that we are alone is really not so lottery anymore? This kind of irritates me, this argument, because the way that I see it is there's only four possibilities. Either there's no extraterrestrials. A second possibility is there are extraterrestrials, but they cannot come to Earth. A third possibility is that there are extraterrestrials, they can come to Earth, but they choose not to. A fourth possibility is that there are extraterrestrials, they can come to Earth, but in coming to Earth, they choose to be hidden. I mean, technically there are five possibilities because they can come to Earth and choose to be open, but that's what we're observing is not happening. So when we observe that this is not happening directly, there's still four other possibilities. So to me, it's like not like this 1 in a billion chance we should just pick the lottery chance that we are alone. To me, I see a 1 in 4 chance that we could be living in one of those particular scenarios. In one of those scenarios, meaning they have a secret modus operandi, that particular scenario seems to be exactly what we're experiencing. Meaning, if you're to assume that an extraterrestrial species would indeed want to be hidden, then wouldn't it be safe to assume that what we would get would be a whole bunch of circumstantial evidence? Meaning we wouldn't get that hard on the nail scientific evidence that a lot of these skeptics demand.
but we would get just little blips in the sky and a few videos here and a few videos there, maybe a few abduction cases here and there. But that's exactly what we're getting. So why would we not assume that that particular 1 in 4 chance scenario, at least in my mind, since there's no other way to calculate the possibilities of these scenarios, that 1 in 4 scenario could be the one that we are being visited, but they just are trying to be hidden. And these scientists are too egotistical to realize that they are the rats in the lab. And the last point, I know I'm kind of getting sidetracked here, but this is really important points. You cannot use the scientific method to study UFOs and aliens. And that's because the scientific method naturally assumes that you yourself, being the smartest species in this entire planet, can control the natural environments around you. That is the nature of establishing experiments, that you try to take into account all the variables so that you have no confounding variables while studying nature itself, because we're the smartest ones. We should be able to close off all the variables and thus create a proper experiment. But how does one create a proper experiment if the very variable that you are studying ends up being the confounding variable itself? Meaning they are the ones who can affect the nature of evidence itself, whether they have some magical technology that erases your cell phone or drains the battery of your phone, or just magically they know somehow that you're looking at them. Maybe there's a conscious science that we don't quite understand. They're telepathically able to note that. There's no way that we can use the scientific method to figure out whether UFOs and aliens are real. So just forget about it. We got to expand our mind and really think, what else can we do? What else can we do to get this information? And I do think that by listening to other people is one way. I think you can do cross-sectional metadata studies on all these accounts from, let's say, alien abduction victims. The same thing that Dr. E. Mack from Harvard, the Harvard psychologist that almost gave away his career, who thought that there was some mental construct to alien abductions, but then realized, holy shit, these people are actually saying something that they believe in. And not just that, but they come from all kinds of demographics. Age, career, sex, it didn't make a difference. They look like they were just a natural segment of the natural population. There was nothing specific about this demographic that seemed to point that there was some kind of mental construct or mental disease that would make them believe that they are being frickin' visited by extraterrestrial aliens. Let's listen to their stories, and then let's overlap them. And wherever they overlap the most, I guarantee you will find some truths in that. That could be one way we can start investigating this topic of UFOs and aliens. Man, that was a long rant. I apologize about that. So the Senate Intelligence Committee voted in June to have the Pentagon intelligence community provide a public analysis of the encounters, following the official Pentagon release of 3 short videos showing U.S. aircraft encountering these phenomena. We have things flying over our military bases in places where we are conducting military exercises, and we don't know what it is, and it isn't ours. So that's a legitimate question to ask, the chairman of that committee, Senator Marco Rubio, told a local Miami news station, WFOR-TV, in July. Frankly, it's something from outside this planet that might actually be better than the fact that we've seen some sort of technological leap on behalf of the Chinese or the Russians or some other adversary, he added. Once again, I'm going to show you a CIA document that refutes that idea. The video released by the Pentagon appears to show unidentified flying objects rapidly moving while recorded by infrared cameras. 2 of the videos contain service members reacting in awe at to how quickly these objects are moving. One voice speculates that it could be a drone. And just to give you a sense of how fast these things are moving, I mean, they're basically breaking the laws of inertia. I mean, if you were to zigzag stop at an instant at the speed that they're doing so, you would literally flatten into a pancake, and obviously the structural integrity of the craft would be completely demolished. So I don't even know if we know of materials that can withstand that type of pressure. So what I'm trying to say here is they figured something out with gravity. Somehow they're able to control gravity, which to this day is still one of the most mysterious physics concepts that apparently no physicist seems to have figured out. But somehow I'm supposed to believe that China figured it out. Okay. In May, CNN obtained hazard reports detailing encounters between U.S. Navy aircraft and unidentified aerial phenomenon from the Navy Safety Center. The unknown aircraft appeared to be small in size, approximately the size of a suitcase, in silver and color. That's interesting. Certainly nobody can fit in the size of a suitcase. You'd assume that that's some kind of, I don't know, maybe like a drone scout ship, something that is powered by some kind of artificial intelligence. Who knows? It's tough to say. But reading further, the reports described the observed phenomenon as unmanned aerial systems, UAS, the Pentagon's official terminology for drone aircraft. The former head of the program, Luis Elizondo, told CNN in 2017 that he personally believes there is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone. Now, this is an old story. This was posted in August. Now, check out this news story where it says, Defense Department confirms leaked video of unidentified aerial phenomena is real. It is real, says CNN. The Defense Department has confirmed that leaked photos and videos of unidentified aerial phenomena taken in 2019 are indeed legitimate images of unexplained objects. Photos and videos of triangle-shaped objects blinking and moving through the clouds were taken by Navy personnel, Pentagon spokesman Sue Go said in a statement to CNN. She also confirmed that photos of 3 unidentified flying objects, one sphere-shaped, another acorn-shaped. Now let's get back to this acorn because we're going to show some NASA images that we have not shown before that seems to have similar acorn shapes, though not exact. These are images that I have not shown before, so stay tuned for that. And one characterized as a metallic blimp were also taken by Navy personnel. And we actually discovered in Photoshop something really interesting about this metallic blimp. Let's put it this way. It's almost certainly not a blimp from what we discovered on Photoshop. We're going to get to that in just a second. As we have said before, to maintain operations security and to avoid disclosing information that may be useful to potential adversaries, the Department of Defense does not discuss publicly the details of either the observations or examinations of reported incursions into the training ranges or designated airspace, including those incursions initially designated as UAP, Go said. She also said that the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force, created in August to investigate UFO sightings observed by the military, has included these incidences in their outgoing examinations. The Navy photos and videos were published by Mystery Wire. These are the images that we're going to show in a second, and on Extraordinary Beliefs website last week, but has been circulating online since last year. There have been a number of reports of unauthorized and unidentified aerial entering various military-controlled ranges in designated airspaces in recent years. The Navy said in 2019, last year, the Pentagon released 3 videos showing unidentified aerial phenomenon clips that the U.S. Navy had previously confirmed were real. Ladies and gentlemen, we have not just a U.S. agency, we're talking about the U.S. Navy that is involved in the protection, the defense of this country, telling us that there are vehicles flying overhead that they cannot identify. This is absolutely extraordinary. I don't know how else to phrase that. U.S. intelligence agencies have been directed to give unclassified reports about UAPs to Congress in June. And that is why I say disclosure is here. Now, I understand certain senators, certain individuals might say, well, these could be drones. These could be Chinese military crafts. I get that argument. But let me show you what we discovered with some of these images that were published by Mystery Wire. So this is the blimp type object that they showcased. First of all, that looks crazy. It's like literally comes straight off of a sci-fi movie. But when we went ahead and processed this in Photoshop, we decided to put a channel mixing layer and kind of pull some of the color channels to see what's happening with this image. And check this out. Do you see that? Now, this is something that I've noticed with a lot of these UFOs, because whereas in the outside edge, you get a consistent sky pixelation, very close to the object, you get these wave-like perturbations in the atmosphere, which you don't see on the image by itself, but you certainly see it when you start extracting the color channels. So just to overlay the color channel once again, just to showcase how that looks, well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Whatever this blimp-like object is, it seems to have some kind of force field, energy field. I don't know how else to call it. Something that has strange wave-like patterns protruding outside of the craft, around the entire craft. Now, the reason why I'm showing this is because we've seen this phenomena. This is something that wasn't just described by Bob Lazar in the documentary by Jeremy Corbell when he talked about how these crafts actually create these pockets of energy that essentially thermodynamically isolates the object from space-time itself, which could explain why these objects can stop at a dime and not be affected by gravity. Well, this is something that we actually saw on NASA images. Check this out. So here's one image that we processed already. And look at this. You have some object. Actually, we haven't even processed this. Let's go ahead and put a channel mixer and we'll show you what happens here. Because if I pump up the red, for example, look at this. You not only get a field, but you can literally see some kind of, I don't know what this is, something projecting seemingly away from the craft. And here's another example. This object is going in the opposite direction, but once again, it has the same thing, has this almost like force field like thing with some kind of projection. Once again, let's pump up the reds, and you can really start seeing how pronounced this is. And why not give another one? Here is a picture of the astronauts about to walk on the moon, and on the background, hey, somebody is watching. So I'm showing you all these images because if it can be construed that these indeed are UFOs being captured by NASA, there seems to be a consistent phenomenon of a force field around these objects, which we were able to pick up with that blimp-like object. I thought that was worthwhile discussing and showing to the audience. Here is another processed image, just so you see how clear that is. Like I said, this stuff looks like it's coming straight out of a sci-fi movie or something. It's pretty crazy. And so one other thing that they had in the mystery wire, let's go ahead and go back to the article so I can show you what I'm talking about. And this is something we showcased in our previous episode, but for the people who didn't catch that, I think this is something that's worthwhile mentioning. So they had a few interesting crafts that they talked about on CNN. They talked about the triangular craft. They talked about that blimp-like object, and then they talked about a sphere. These are all objects that we've actually showcased in our episodes from videos and little things that we've seen on NASA and other individuals who claim to have seen UFOs. But in particular, I wanted to showcase this image. This is one of the photos that was captured by, I think, an F-18. I forget the exact airplane. But if you look at it closely, check this out. This is a horrible image. Why are they watermarking this? Come on. Here's a NASA image that I found on the moon. So if I increase the size real quick using a Detail Preserve 2.0 Adobe Photoshop filter, well, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we get. And just to kind of showcase it, juxtaposed to the one that was provided by the Navy, I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, you tell me. To me, it looks eerily close to each other. It's hard to determine exactly what these are, but the fact that, I was interested by this kind of like rounded shape and the fact that it's squared off. And when you look at this, it has kind of the same traits. You got this kind of like outer ring with what seems like it's almost looks like bicycle spokes. And then you got this rounded end and this kind of more flattened edge on the bottom, if you can call it the bottom. And the fact that one is captured by a jet fighter and the other one's captured by NASA, by definition, if it can be determined it's the same craft, this proves that this is extraterrestrial by the very definition of the word, given that this was captured on the moon. So let's go over some of the objects that were not mentioned in the previous episode. And, one of the objects that the article talked about, as I was showing you earlier, is something that they called acorn shaped. And I think they're referring to this object. So check this out. So we got this weird black thing hovering over Earth. And if I were to just kind of zoom in real quick, to me, it looks very, it's not, like I said, it's not exact. But what? This is pretty crazy, right? And the fact that, look how symmetrical this is. You see, the Preserve 2.0 filter tends to do a pretty good job at recreating pixels. So when you see these straight edges, there's a very high likelihood that these edges are indeed real, that this object is exactly what it looks like. And also, it has to do with kind of this like blackness and in the pixelation. It just looks so similar to the one that we see from the Navy against the blue sky. I thought this was unbelievable, if you ask me. And here is another object that we also found on NASA. Once again, it looks like a black blip on Earth. And if you were to just use that preserve 2.0 filter, once again, well, check it out, ladies and gentlemen. It's not acorn shaped. Looks like a half crescent moon, but it certainly looks anomalous. And I thought it was worthwhile sharing, given some of the other things that we've been seeing recently. And they were talking about triangular crafts, right? Pyramid-shaped crafts in some cases. Now, in this particular case, what I wanted to do is actually go over the image itself and just kind of showcase it to you as is from NASA. And we're just going to kind of do this together right now on the spot. I'm going to go ahead and crop these interesting little lights. We're going to go and increase the size using the 2.0 filter. Let's make this, screw it, let's go all the way big, 2000, why not? And already it's starting to look pretty anomalous, but watch what happens when I change the channels. Image adjustment, channel mixer. Look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Whoa. Hello. You know, in almost every way that I try to play around with this channel, I get what looks to be a very obvious three-dimensional object, triangular object, and not just some fuzzy lights as it initially appeared to be. And so let's just go ahead and overlay this, and you'll get a sense of what this thing could be like. This is coming straight from NASA, ladies and gentlemen. Honestly, when I first saw this, let's go back in history. When I saw it from far away, to me, I was just like, oh, these are just tiny little lights. Maybe they're just a tiny reflection. But to actually zoom in and get something that looks almost like a three-dimensional object, that's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And you yourself can find these images. You can go ahead and go to the NASA archives and look at the Apollo and the Mercury missions. You'll find some really interesting things happening there. Now, I want to highlight this image because here is another image that I have not showcased before. But when I zoomed it in, I was like, whoa, what in the world? So I just cropped this real quick. Look how small that is. Cropped it. And let's go ahead and increase the size. Boom. What the hell? So I took a layer and just kind of, look, I did not draw this. I literally just took a layer and overlaid it. That is insane. That looks like something that I can't even describe what that is. It's so different. It's so extraterrestrial, but it certainly doesn't look like an artifact. It looks like a physical object of some sorts. You know, you got obvious geometry happening with this craft, and you know, I just thought it was something that was worth showing to you, ladies and gentlemen. I thought it was something that looked anomalous just by itself, but upon increasing its size and by overlaying the layer in a way that would darken it a little bit, you get something that certainly looks crazy. It's like, let's cue the Twilight Zone music or maybe the X-Files, because this is really strange. Okay, so one other thing that I wanted to showcase. So now that the Navy is admitting that these crafts could indeed be real, we have to start going into the next question, meaning, what are the occupants of these crafts? What did they look like? And I did an episode on alien abductions, and I'll be honest with you, this episode really shocked me. And it shocked me because I got 4 credible stories from these individuals who claimed they were being abducted by aliens. And essentially their stories matched in ways that I could have never expected, with things that I never even knew about alien abductions. So some of these individuals went so far as to actually provide images. And what really struck me as strange is that they talked about, and this was like, I think was mentioned in 3 different accounts, that after the abduction took place with these beings, some of them look like ant people, look like grays. They all seem to describe a motherly female creature that apparently was, I don't want to say good for us, but they said she felt very nurturing, And one thing that was familiar with all these accounts is they didn't just describe this motherly figure as a straight up alien. They talked about it being like a hybrid. And, this was really strange because we actually came out with the alien abduction video just by sheer coincidence a day before this other documentary called Australian Skies 2 about alien abductions came out. I think it premiered in the Secure Team's channel. Swear to God, I had no idea this was happening. This was just straight up coincidence. Well, it happens that Australian Skies 2 also, the guy in that documentary also mentioned a motherly, hybrid looking female alien creature. So so I get 3 accounts that are similar in this, and then I'm hearing this documentary that comes out a day later talking about this. And so I just wanted to show you the image. Here's one of them. And check out this next one. These people gave me this unbeknownst to one another. What? Ladies and gentlemen, this is real. Both of them were said to be female, motherly-like figures. These were given by alien abduction victims. A day before Australian Skies 2 comes out and the guy's talking about the same thing. So you want to talk about occupants? Maybe they are extraterrestrial beings. If that's what people are reporting. If the ones who have actually claimed to have been in these crafts are seeing the same thing, should we not believe their accounts? And for those who still think that those UFO aliens, or whatever you want to call it, the UAVs, that those things could actually be drones from China, well, here is the CIA file that we uncovered that for some reason I can no longer find, but I have the original over here. Well, the CIA file was basically the Air Force in correspondence with the CIA because the Air Force was about to create the Condom Report, the scientific investigation on UFOs and aliens. And they're basically trying to gather intel. They're trying to get as much information as possible from any previous investigations on UFOs and aliens, to which there was one other one called the Robertson's Panel. The Robertson's Panel was a panel that was created in 1953 to study the wave of UFOs that went over the White House in 1952. You might have heard of the story. It's pretty famous. But the point is that the CIA was not giving the Air Force all the information that they were requesting. In fact, there was an entire correspondence of files that lasted, I don't know how many, 57 pages that I was transcribing. And the CIA was constantly saying, no, we're not going to give you this information. No, this is classified. We're not allowed to give it to you, even though we're talking about the Air Force here, trying to gather information to create an actual scientific account on whether UFOs is something worthy to be studied. And then on page 11 out of 57, I found this. And ladies and gentlemen, this is like a smoking gun. On the very end of this file, the CIA admits, I think it's the director of the CIA admits to the Air Force, we are most anxious that further publicity not be given to the information that the panel, the Robertson's Panel, was sponsored by the Central Intelligence Agency, ladies and gentlemen. So in case you didn't get that, the scientific panel that was set up to study the wave of UFOs that went over the White House was sponsored by the Central Intelligence Agency. In other words, it wasn't a scientific panel. It was an intelligence panel, something that was created to create a cover-up of whatever it was that they wanted to cover up. And that's the most important point. What in the world would the CIA try to cover up in 1953 when trying to study what in the world happened over the White House? And to me, it's almost like an admission that there was something exotic, something strange that they didn't want to let out to the public. And in a way kind of implies that whatever was occurring back in the 50s, including in 1947 when we had the Roswell crash, that all of that is likely the same phenomenon that we're talking about today. This is not a new phenomenon. This has been happening since the Renaissance. It's been happening since cowboy times. That's why they have a movie called Cowboys and Aliens. So if you were to assume that the same flying saucer, which is already a strange concept to have in the 1950s, But now it doesn't seem so strange when you think about quantum mechanics and the idea of symmetry and the fact that entire units can actually behave like quantum particles if they are thermodynamically isolated. Thus, they can almost literally float through a wall, which is exactly what the abduction victims claim when they talk about aliens floating through their room. With all the current information, the flying saucers don't seem so funny anymore, do they? So if you can assume that these two phenomena are one and the same, then, ladies and gentlemen, we're not talking about some foreign adversary who just happened to discover one of the biggest scientific breakthroughs in the history of science and just neglected to tell the rest of the world, being able to control gravity. I don't think we're talking about that. I think we're literally talking about what alien abduction people say when they talk about extraterrestrial aliens. In my humble opinion, I believe that is actually the simpler explanation. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You know, we've been shut down. We've been stomped on. We've been demonetized. We've been just hindered in every possible way. In some episodes, we only get 300 views, despite having over 300 videos and doing this for over 4 years with some groundbreaking discoveries. I don't know what else to do here, ladies and gentlemen. I do this basically pro bono. So if you do like this episode, definitely share it. I don't know how much that's going to help because I don't know the limits of what YouTube is doing with the algorithms. I just know that regardless of the amount of times that we make breakthrough discoveries or breakthrough images, or it's just nothing ever helps. Nothing ever gets this channel elevated. So it's on you, ladies and gentlemen, to help us continue, to help us grow. If you could like the video, or if you could subscribe, if you have not subscribed, well, that also helps, I assume. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me. This is Felipe speaking, signing out.